topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good morning, listeners. Of course, I'm excited to be here with you because I get to spend the time with you. So I invite you to keep the kindness circle going as we have talked about, because kindness is something that will get you way, way, way further in your life. In the sense, I'm talking about the happiness, because at the end of the day, we all are looking for joy in our lives. Helping others brings happiness to you, and that is priceless. And for those of you who have bought our books, especially Entrepreneur's Garden and Expert to Influencer, we thank you, because part of the profits go to kiva.org. So thank you for getting those and helping us support others. And today I want to introduce a very, very special guest, Magdalena Mook. She is CEO of the International Coaching Federation. And yes, I'm an ICF accredited coach, so very proudly presenting her. She's a Thinkers 50 recognized global coaching leader, and she has got decades of experience across diplomacy, business, and human development. And Magda has shaped the future of coaching for tens of thousands of coaches around the world. So welcome, Magda.
Thank you so much for having me, Divya. It's remarkable to be here with you today. And whenever you're introduced with having decades of experience, we're like, okay, we're getting there.
You are very special, because even though you've achieved so much, you're humble. And so just that connection, okay. You represent coaching, that's how I've felt it. And having known you personally, it's just an honor to have you and bring your process and how you have led and everything to everyone else, because the way I feel, I'm very passionate about coaching. So Magda, share when initially, as you were determining your career in your early life years, did you have any other career that you had thought of?
Oh, no, I think that very few of us actually follow the roadmap. Maybe few, maybe some. I'm thinking about my colleagues in medical profession or some very highly specialized fields. For the rest of us, I think it's being present to what's happening around us. I do have decades of experience. So when I was growing up and when I was even in college, coaching per se did not really exist as a field. You did not even have ICF yet at that point. So needless to say, I could not possibly dream of being a part of a coaching profession. So my background, I have bachelor's degree in economics. And nope, you cannot take economics out of the girl. It's always present with me. And I have master's degree in international relations. So combined, I think it just brought about the curiosity. curiosity about observing what's happening around us, as I said, how the environment is changing, and more importantly, what's needed. And I mean it when I say what's needed. And I channel my dear colleague and friend who was on the board of directors of the ICF Foundation, Morel would always say, he said, we can't think about what's possible. We have to think about what's needed, because there is always a gap. There is always a gap. We think that what's possible is, say, here, but what's needed is there. And that should be our inspiration. That should be our aim. So, my career took me from working for the US federal government, another not-for-profit organization, a couple of small startups, only to become a part of ICF almost 20 years ago. And that's probably the most unusual journey, because I had a privilege and honor to observe the evolution of coaching and how coaching is perceived, how coaching is received, and how coaching truly is changing lives.
Absolutely. So a lot of people are coaches now, and people are familiar with coaches, and yet there are still quite a few people who are unknown to it. So can you tell us the evolution of it? Like, what went into creating that foundation, and how has that coaching, when it was in the nascency and where it is now? If you can kind of walk us through that journey, that would be great.
Yeah. So ICF, I can speak to ICF better than I can speak to the entire coaching profession. But ICF was created in 1995. So we are celebrating our 30th anniversary this year, also a big celebration. And it was designed and dreamt of by a group of very passionate people who observed that what was possible in that particular era was not providing many answers to the societal, economic, personal problems that people were struggling with. Famously, Julio Olaya, one of the forefathers of coaching, said that coaching emerged because nothing else worked. Now, what the founding mothers and fathers of ICF determined from the beginning, and seriously, I am at awe, because they said two things. They said that first, it's going to be an international organization, and it was predominantly North American, of course, at that point. And they said, no, it's going to be a global phenomenon, and it's our responsibility to set it up as such. Apparently, there were some spirited conversations around that. But they did say it is a global phenomenon. It will be a global phenomenon. We owe it to the future. And other, which sometimes people didn't realize or don't realize still, is that ICF was created not to offer a community for coaches, but rather to give credibility to the coaching profession. And I think that this is so important in the context of who ICF is now. We pride ourselves at being a standard setter for the coaching profession, and that's our responsibility. So when people talk about coaching, they talk profession, they talk high education, they talk ethics, they talk research that's underpinning the effectiveness of coaching. And I think that I could talk for hours, so stop me anytime. Is that coaching started more as a one-on-one application. Then corporations started adopting coaching, but also more in a one-on-one, predominantly C-suite, top-level officials. And in some parts of the world, considered more remedial than developmental.
Yeah.
And then, before you know it, public sector started being interested in coaching. And then I do apologize for my cough. And then you started seeing not-for-profit organizations also starting utilizing coaching, and my delight, universities embracing coaching as a field, as a discipline to be taught, to be offered as a support tool, but as I said, to be taught as a potential career. So now, as we said, remedial in many instances before, now it's a badge of honor. Younger people, they don't ask for it, they demand that they are working with the coach. In many organizations, high potentials are offered the opportunity to work with the coach. In many organizations, onboarding is being supported by coaching. So I think that the mindset about coaching from remedial to growth, potential, future has been
definitely coming in. And that tells us about the evolution. And you hinted upon, a couple of things which I want to pick up on, that observing what are the needs, that there's a gap between what is possible and what are the needs. So as ICHAF has evolved, and I know that, we are changing competencies with the changing times, we are keeping up with it. So what trends are you observing currently, especially with the younger generation?
Oh, it is very rewarding to see how the world around us is changing. And as I become this older generation, it's like, oh, these kids. But it is fantastic. Younger generation, as you know, ICF prides itself also on doing a lot of research. Our main partner being PricewaterhouseCoopers, who will be releasing the next iteration of global coaching study a little later this year. Mm-hmm. But what we know from the studies is that younger people are more aware about coaching. They know about coaching, and they are also more open to enter into a coaching relationship. Another interesting tidbit is that younger individuals prefer to work with a younger coach. And what they say is that they very much respect their managers, their mentors. And for a coach, they want somebody who understands their everyday life, somebody that they don't have to explain the newest movie star or the singing sensation. I have to tell you that story because I just love it. I was in Cyprus not a long time ago and had a privilege of meeting with the CFOs of major companies in Cyprus. And Cyprus is really emerging as the high-tech place in Europe for sure. And I was telling them the same story about younger people wanting to work with younger coaches. And I said, because they don't want to have to explain who a Swiftie is. And I had an absolute blank stare coming from the room. And they were like, Swift? Yes, the ones following Taylor Swift. But so that I think illustrates the situation perfectly. So what's needed is a coach who is well grounded in the reality of a life of a person who, of course, doesn't operate in a vacuum, but I'm also a systemically trained coach. So I think that this is very important, that we cannot just separate the personal life and a professional life in 100%. We always bring a little bit of each to the other. So I think that the fact that the younger people have slightly different approach to coaching is great. What is also great is, especially Gen Zs we see are much more focused on purpose. They definitely want to work for organizations that have purpose greater than profit, and that the leaders of those organizations can explain that purpose clearly and can also map it to their individual responsibilities. We work very closely with the Association of Change Management Professionals and ACMP, and we did a study together with Human Capital Institute, where it was discovered that coaching is one of the best support mechanism to change initiatives. We know all these statistics, right? 70 to 80% of change initiatives failing. And they apparently either succeed or fail for the same three reasons: leadership, communication, and resistance. Coaching, as we know, is supporting beautifully each and every one of them. So a leader that understands the purpose, the leader that can articulate the purpose, and the leader that can speak openly, clearly, transparently to reduce the resilience, should the resilience to the change occur. So yeah, I'm very excited about younger people having access to coaching and taking advantage of it.
Absolutely. So we have talked about that. Okay, how is the younger generation looking for coaching? Now, let's say you also mentioned about that now coaching is more towards growth potential coaching, like, bringing the succession planning, helping the leaders to become confident leaders. And so now when we are talking about that, if a company is looking to bring in coaches, so from your experience, what is the difference between internal coaching and external coaching? Because that's a question that's always kind of comes to the forefront during the discussions.
Sure. I think the most technical answer that can be offered is it depends. And it does, because there are many very important aspects of internal coaching that are very favorable to the organization, such as knowing the culture of the organization, already being bound by the confidentiality of the organization, having stake in the success of the organization, right? And everything has its flip side. What if people don't want to open up the same way to the internal coach as to external coach?
Right.
What if internal coach is and that's practice in many organizations. This is not their full-time job. They have another job plus their internal coach. How does that play? What if an internal coach is offered and afforded the opportunity to coach a senior person in the organization, therefore having access to confidential organizations they don't have any business having access to? So there are these ifs. So what we do say is that there is wisdom in a mixture of engaging some external coaches, oftentimes for highest level individuals, having internal coaching cadre, because these are the people available right there, and that they can help almost instantaneously should such a help be needed. And then the very, very fast growing part of the coaching continuum, offering training in coaching skills to line managers. They do not have to become coaches. They need to understand certain competencies of a coach that make them better leaders. So I think that the combination of the three is a winning combination.
Definitely. I like that. And that will answer a lot of questions that usually companies have. And you talked about something about the line managers or the internal managers can know about certain competencies. They don't need to be trained to be coaches. So what would be a good pathway for them?
Funny you should ask, because we've been observing this trend for quite a while now, and one of the concern being shared with ICF was that not every organization can afford to train their managers in 60 hours of coaching education to get to that level. So ICF is right now in a testing phase of offering 8-hour training just to point into the leadership skills that are enhanced by coaching capabilities. So, so later in a year, we hope to start offering it more openly to organizations. We have huge interest from associations of professionals, which is like, okay, we're an association. That's very appropriate that we would offer it to our colleagues and friends from associations. But yes, it's very important. You may recall not a long time ago, the term leader as a coach, manager as a coach was very popular. ICF got very stringent in not utilizing that language because they're not coaches. They are managers using coaching skills or leaders using coaching skills. The relationship is different. The level of confidentiality is different. The seniority is different. So it is important that the person offering this kind of management style and a person on the receiving end understand the difference.
Absolutely. Because there's, as you mentioned about, there's a difference of the power dynamics.
Yeah.
Because when the internal leaders are doing, they have to also keep their goals and organizational hierarchy in mind. Versus when you are with a coach, the power dynamics is very different because, as you mentioned early on in the ethics, and I'd like to touch upon that, that we take that very seriously. And power dynamics is zero, where it's all about the client and helping the client succeed, and it's all about their well-being. So can you talk about that relationship between a coach and a client?
Code of ethics, of course, being one of the core competencies, and our listeners may know or not, ICF reviews the code of ethics every 3 years. It is absolutely critical that the code is relevant and current and responds to, again, the needs and demands and the desires of the current environment. So it is very important in that stage of contracting between a client and a coach of what do they contract for. It's very important, especially if we have an organizational sponsor, that it is absolutely clear of what will and will not be disclosed, what will and will not be discussed, what will and will not be shared. I think that what we see from the independent review board is that some clients and coaches do not pay enough attention to clarity of that agreement. Having said that, the ethics, especially the confidentiality, but like with everything, there are caveats. Especially our coaching colleagues that work with governments. There are certain things that have to be disclosed, and coaching relationship is not privileged, so it can be requested by the court of law. So we need to be careful there too, that we are not necessarily setting up our coaches for some kind of danger, because they might have learned something that, according to law, needs to be disclosed. So those things have to be discussed. My late colleague, he actually taught a class of "Is everything confidential in U.S. federal government?" That was the scariest class I ever took. Because the answer was no, and frankly, not at all. So I think that we need to be mindful. We need to be mindful that there's some legal, some medical, especially in the financial services, things that we have to be mindful that are not covered by confidentiality. And yet, to what you said, it is the greatest underlying value of the coaching relationship is that the coach is not to save the client. Coach is to facilitate the coach's journey into finding their best answers. And that's equally ethically important. The coach is not there to save. The coach is there to support.
Yes. And that is such a distinction that you have made, because so many times what happens is that, in my personal experience, people come to you thinking that, yep, you are that genie button, and have recently I had someone come with 13 goals on during our first session. And this is even after going through the agreement and our first session, having everything clear. So as you talked about, coaches are there to support, not to save. And it's important that, as the coaches go through it, that there is that reminder of that relationship. So what would you say to fellow coaches, where so many times what happens is that, agreement is made, but the clients may forget, as to how to continue to uphold that level of clarity throughout the profession or throughout that relationship with the client?
Yeah, I think again, as we look into the core coaching competencies, and that coaching mindset and coaching presence are so important. Because frankly, as we always say, the client is expert in self. The coach is expert in a process. So frankly, the responsibility is that of a coach to sorry, to bring the client back, should they veer, and not to be seduced by that invitation to maybe veer a little bit away from what coaching is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I think it is also important to remember that that's one of the myths of coaching, I think, is that the coach cannot share knowledge. Of course, coach can share knowledge. It's just not to give advice and say what to do. But if we find ourselves in a conversation with the client that's stuck or has really difficulty seeing the next step, offering something that has been useful before to a different client, or offering a reflection on something, is perfectly okay, and in fact useful, I think, to both.
Absolutely. And there's, the whole workforce is changing, as you had talked earlier about. So people like us, we are kind of, I as well, with decades of experience, we are almost on the one spectrum, and then we have another spectrum of Gen Z, and now Alpha generation is also getting ready to kind of come into the mix. So what changes are you seeing in the demographics, and where are the trends, and what can coaches and as well as clients can keep in mind?
I think this is another very, very interesting evolution. And again, I'm speaking from 20 years of my experience with ICF. When I first started working with ICF, almost to a person, a coach was a little bit more senior, and it was typically second, if not third career for that individual. It has never been stated in the competencies, if you really carefully read through them, but there was a conviction, maybe not a belief, that's too strong of a word, that one has to be an experienced individual. Really? We have some, and there are some interesting studies about, that whole notion, does somebody has to have an experience in a field, or does have to have an experience in a position? And you probably can find many people to support each position. Recently, I spoke to a CEO, very senior person, large corporation, huge responsibility. And he said that he was a little bit forced to work with the young coach. And he's I think his HR person was like, try. He says, no, I need somebody who was in my shoes, da, da, da. And the HR person says like, well, but they may have the same blind spots as you do. And they may just let you go without explaining because yes, they understand. So the CEO is working with this young coach who knows nothing about the subject. It was technology company, nothing. So he asks, like a child, but why? But how? How does that happen? And slightly irritated at first, the CEO at the end says like, that was the most insightful session I ever had because I had to explain my business to somebody who doesn't understand it. He said, do my clients understand my business? No, I'm a provider. But when they do, we have a different level of conversation. So I think that this evolution of the underlying belief that one has to be a little older in age and a little more experienced is moving away a little. And I think it's also reflected in the fact that greater number of universities started offering degrees in coaching. So that to me is a very clear signal that yes, it can be taught. And if it can be taught, like in any profession, there are some people who are innately better at it than others. That's true everywhere. But it is a profession, it can be taught, and therefore younger people can choose it as their career.
Yeah, no, definitely. So let's say some of our young audience, or for that matter, anybody who's thinking about whether this coaching profession is for me or not. What would you tell them, and what would be like, a couple of good ways of going about it?
Probably the first is it doesn't happen overnight.
Yes.
And this is also true. I don't sometimes I'm just smiling to myself because it's so true for any profession. No doctor, no lawyer, no anybody fresh out of school is at the top of their professional career. It takes time. One of our studies with PwC showed it very, very vividly that first 3 years are really difficult because you start running a business, and it's typically unless you are internal coach, is a small business, and not every small business is successful from the very beginning. So we noticed that after 3 years, people start charging more, start having more clients, and are, speaking of confidence, are much more confident in promoting and running their business. So be patient with that business side, be patient with yourself before you decide that maybe it's not for you. And the other word of wisdom, if you will, is to be a good coach, one has to be well trained. And that's non-negotiable. That's absolutely non-negotiable. Fortunately, ICF is very lucky now being home to more than 3,000 approved and accredited programs, coaching education programs, and that really is non-negotiable. One has to be well trained to start with, and has to continue that journey of professional growth and development.
So that's very powerful. Like what you said is having the patience, because just like you can go from kindergarten to being a PhD student, you just can't expect your business to like go like, yep, I have the certification and now I'm just going to hit the ground running.
Exactly.
There's a runway for that where you have to take that time. Now you mentioned that it's amazing that there are 3,000 accredited programs. How can people go about to finding about those programs? Because, some programs may resonate with someone, some may resonate with others. So what's a good way of finding them?
Yeah, welcome to new ICF website. We just released it a couple of weeks ago, really, coachingfederation.org. And there is a searchable database of coaching education programs. And it's beautiful because you can put a keyword. There are many criteria that you can put in. You may prefer the program to be fully asynchronous. You may prefer your program to be in certain language. You may prefer it to be very intense, shorter, or spread out in weeks or months. Fortunately, you can search with those different things. As you mentioned, some have more business attitude. The others are maybe a little bit more on the life or spiritual side. So this is very individual choice. And I know sometimes it may think like 3,000 is overwhelming, but utilizing those criteria, you can narrow them down, and then call them, talk to them, talk to alumni of those programs. As you know, ICF has over 140 chapters around the globe. Check with them, check what they would recommend, and see, because it is important that you find something that resonates with you, so you're really happy going through this training rather than struggling to finish it.
No, absolutely. And also, just to add to the information that you've shared, just go, you can be a guest to one of your local ICF chapters, and there are a lot of accredited schools in your town itself. And if it's not, so, as you mentioned, Magda, like, go that search, and having that keywords is going to be super helpful, because now you can find what works for you. That's the key. Like, find something. And I really like what you shared, that just go have that conversation, see where you feel aligned. Because I always say that coaching is a purpose profession where you step into it with purpose. And I mean, I'm not saying like the other professions are not, but for this, you gotta have that heart. So it's important to get that alignment, because you are here to make an impact. And as you drive impact, just remember how fortunate we are to be in the lives of people, where people are opening to us and just bringing that curiosity. And I love the story that you shared, that you don't have to be experienced. So don't think. So what would you say if somebody's thinking, oh, I don't have experience, and maybe hesitant, they want to do coaching? What are some of the answers to some of those thoughts and fears?
Probably the first one is that think about the audience. As we said, younger and younger people are seeking coaching and are excited about joining forces with the coach. They are not looking for experience. They are looking for somebody who can walk them through that process of finding answers. So already there, and I think that there is a difference. Even 15 years ago, probably people who were capable of purchasing coaching were in a different place in their career. But now we have these young ones. So that's the first. And second, it's like as long as you are well trained, as well as you are well versed in coaching competencies, and as you are practicing those competencies, I think you can prove to yourself as much as to your clients that you are very capable in delivering this service. It's not about coaching, but I just came back from the Middle East, where, especially in Saudi Arabia, it is a young population. It is the young demographic. Excuse me. It is a young demographic, and many people in important governmental positions are young. So I asked some of the colleagues, because we have good fortune of working with some of those organizations. And apparently the Crown Prince's principle is, if you're good enough, you're old enough. I like it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then that brings us back to the coaching competency, right? Coaching presence. That it doesn't matter what the age is, what the experience is, as long as you're present. And as long as you have your client front and center, and as you're following through your learnings, you can definitely do that. So in case, wonderful audience, if you're thinking, definitely check out the site. And I've been a coach myself for, like over 15 years now. So I'm definitely going to recommend that. It's very near and dear to my heart. So as we bring the show to a close, what are some of the thoughts you want to leave my audience with?
One term that we use quite a bit in coaching is empowerment. Mm-hmm. And to me, coaching is empowering at every possible level. It empowers a coach. It is an amazing service that we offer to the clients. Coaching empowers a client to be more confident, to be a leader, to be capable of going further or more boldly or whatever it might be, right? And then as we think about it, this one client influences, empowers the organizations, communities, families they work within. So that empowerment is really something that transcends through the entire ecosystem. And I think that not too terribly many professions can say that. So I think that's very, very special. And as we revealed new brand identity for the ICF with the new website, we do talk about inspire, transform, and thrive. So I think that every coach, seasoned or one thinking about becoming one, if they can think about it, they can think about it. Because it is inspire, transform, and thrive.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to carry those 3 words today with me, and so powerful. Thank you so much for joining us, Magda, because it was such a pleasure. And as you mentioned, we are so empowered to be in service of others. And how many people can say that? And not only that, the ripple effect, the transformation, and it's not just in one person, but as they go back to the organization, they are helping other people. So what a powerful way to finish. Inspire, transform, and thrive. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Divya.
And thank you, wonderful audience, for joining us, because without you, the show would not be possible. Please reach out to us and let us know how we can serve and support you to live the best life you deserve. And also thank you, Juan, for making the show technically possible. Be well and take care.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.